Good afternoon, YouTube. This is Kelsey from Kels Reads Things, also known as Librarians Recommend. And I am very excited to finally be discussing with you my full review of Kingdom of Ash, the final installment of the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. And as you can tell from all my tabs, I have a lot to discuss with you today. I gave this masterpiece of a novel a 5 out of 5 stars due to the pacing, the content, the character development and growth, as well as the ways the characters were related to each other and converged at one point in the story. Some of the themes include war, adult content such as violence, relationships, things of that nature, epic fantasy, multiple converging storylines. It goes from one point of view to the next in third person. There was quite a bit of a expression of resilience, tragedy, and loss. Honestly, this book had just about everything I look for in my reading habits, and I'm very, very pleased with it and excited to continue discussing it with you today. So where we left off last time when I was discussing this amazing series, Aelin had been captured by Maeve, Mauve, whatever you want to call her, the Queen of the Fae. She's one of 3 supposed Fae sisters. There's Mora and Mala and Maeve. But as we come to learn, I don't want to give too much away, but it turns out that there never were actually 3 Fae queens. So that's a little something for you to look into at some point if you ever decide to pick up this incredible immersive series. I recommend it for fans of young adult fiction, adult fiction, new adult fiction, fantasy, suspense. If you're interested in any of those kind of topics, then this is definitely a series for you. Also, the writing is excellent and it makes you feel like you are part of the characters and their journey, which is always something positive that I look forward to in my readings. Okay, so I stopped at about 1/3 of the way through, so a lot of what I'm going to be discussing today I'm trying to converge into a 10 to 15 minute video, because in the past I love having long videos, but they were a little too long, just a touch too long for comfort. So I won't give any details about Aelin's escape, but she does eventually escape from Mauve and the box and the iron box that they put her into, because as you know, based on my last review, iron is harmful to Fae in this series. She's now back in the company with Rowan, her mate and husband, Lorcan, Elide, Fenris, and Gabriel. Now, Fenris has the wolf form, and he used to be a servant of Maeve, the fairy queen, and he was with Aelin the entire time she was captured, and they invented a very helpful blinking language. I think it was blink 3 times asking, "Are you okay?" And Aelin would respond by either blinking once or twice to indicate whether she was okay or not. And considering how much she was tortured and in the means of the ways she was tortured, a lot of times she was not alright. Speaking of which, Aelin is trying to recover from what she went through. She was with the queen for 2 months, being tortured, even using her own fire magic against her. So right now in the story, Aelin is really trying to overcompensate for the time that she was away, not only due to being captured, but also when she was a young woman and even a young girl. And 10 years ago, she was adopted, so to speak, by a assassin who taught her how to be an assassin. So she's kind of been running away from her responsibility and the weight of that responsibility for 10 years. So now to make up for it, she's training and getting ready for this last battle against Erewhon, one of the evil Val Kings, and Maeve, who may eventually end up teaming up together against her. And one quote I want to mention in terms of Aelin's struggle, in fact I have a couple, so here's to go over that. Aelin let out a sob that cracked something in him. It cracked something in Rowan while they were training. "I can't feel myself anymore. It's like she snuffed me out, ripped me from it, She and Karen and everything they did to me. And you can just feel Aylin's composure just falling apart, which is so heartbreaking because throughout this entire series, Aylin has been pretty much a rock and very solid. There were very few times in which she lost her temper so extremely that she harmed others, but it's come to that point, and now she's not taking care of herself because she's so concerned about her kingdom and about the state of the world in general. So that's admirable. Let's see if I have any more notes about Aylin specifically. But I'll get a little more in touch about a few other quotes for Aylin here in just a minute. So to go into a little bit of history of Maeve, she's abandoned her world only to manipulate the minds of the Fae and Aylin's. She convinced Mala and Mora that she was their older sister, and then it was able to rule over Dornell. The giant spiders in this story actually come from her original realm, and they only serve her, and they are stationed in these mountains to ensure if a ward gate ever opens again for her to escape, or to just let her know if that gate's open again to prevent anyone else from coming in. That's why they're stationed there. So the spiders end up becoming an enemy as well. Lots of enemies and lots of allies in this series. So while Aylin is training with Rowan, as they're trying to get back to Andil, where Kaol is from, Lysandra is with Adian and Terrasen, and as you probably remember from my last video, right now they are not getting along. Adian's upset at Lysandra because she was pretending to be Aylin while Aylin was captured, and Aylin and Lysandra kept all their plans, hidden from everyone else. But this quote from Lysandra when she approaches Adian is very powerful. So I'm going to read that to you. Her leg ached and throbbed, but she managed to sit up, to meet his stare. I've been degraded and humiliated in so many ways for so many years, she said, voice shaking. Not for free, but from the tidal wave that swept up everything inside of her, burning alongside that wound in her leg. But I have never felt as humiliated as I did when you threw me into the snow. When you called me a lying in front of your friends and allies. Never. She hated the angry tears that stung her eyes. I was forced to crawl before men, and gods above, I nearly crawled for you these months. And it takes you nearly dying for you to realize that you have been It takes me nearly dying for you to see me as a human again. So that was really powerful, and this is kind of the point where Adian and Lysandra are starting to try to mend the relationship. So I thought I should go ahead and mention that. And back to Aylin, she and her crew arrive in Anil. It's the birthplace of Kael, and they meet up with him and his pregnant healer wife, Irene, of whom Aylin actually met years ago in Assassin's Blade. And Aylin was amazed to see her, and they had a lovely, wonderful reunion. And Irene actually kept this slip of paper that Aylin gave her many years ago, which with a sum of money that said the world needs more healers, and she kept that forever. And so this was Irene talking to Aylin about that note. It gave me courage, the words you wrote. Every mile I traveled, every long hours I studied and worked, it gave me courage. I thank you for that. Very full, powerful moment. Now to go to Manon and Dorian's storyline. Manon has been struggling with a lot of fear and doubt pretty much the entire series. She is a witch, and she was originally supposed to work for Erewhon, but now she realized her loyalties are with the Croken witches, and she has to convince them that she is the rightful heir, and she is, but they have to accept her as the rightful heir as well. And as you know, based on my previous videos, the Croken witches and the Iron Teeth, Yellow Legs, and Blue Buds did not get along with the Crokens. In fact, they hunt them for sport. So that's why the Krokans were believed to be nearly extinct previously. So lots going on with her, and Dorian is in the process of wanting to depart and go to Morath to find the third word key. And he and Manon's relationship has also been struggling and trying to figure out what their foundation is, because Manon is afraid to admit her feelings for him. And so this is Dorian approaching her. This is a quote. "Tell me to stay. Tell me to stay with you if that's what you want. But you won't say that, will you, Manon? You know why? Because while you may be older, might be deadly in 1,000 different ways, deep down, you're afraid. You don't know how to ask me to stay because you're afraid of admitting to yourself that you want it. You're afraid of yourself more than anyone else in the world. You're afraid." And that really struck a chord with Manon, because later when she ends up having a fantastic defeat, and I won't give that much away, this quote really stood out to me. "She was not a broken-spirited wing leader, unsure of her place in the world. She was not ashamed of the truth before her. She was not afraid." Such powerful, amazing stuff, and such a turnaround from this sort of like evil, cruel witch that we were introduced to in Heir of Fire, the third book, to the incredible Krokan queen that she becomes. So, amazing stuff. So I'm not going to give too much away in terms of the storyline. I'm getting back to Aelin. But we learned in Empire Storm that she has to make a sacrifice of sorts to the gods in order to defeat Erewhon and survive this battle. And at one point, her mother's words from long ago really helped drive her character and how to deal with this. So the quote from her mother is, "It's the strength of this, her heart, that matters. Wherever you go, Aelin, no matter how far, this will lead you home." And it did. It did. Because later on, this amazing quote happens. "In the deepening blues of descending night, amid the snow beginning to fall, Aelin Galathinius had appeared before the sealed southern gate, had appeared before Erewhon and Maeve, her unbound hair billowing in the wind like a golden banner, a last ray of light with the dying day." She was the light that the world needed. So it's just an incredible story. That's probably about all I'm going to discuss in terms of things that happen in the series. Those were some highlights, some things that stood out to me. As I said, a lot of converging storylines. Altogether, I could probably talk for hours about each different storyline, but those were some of the highlights and what I thought really encompassed the story and the themes of the story. Again, a fantastic book. I can't recommend Sarah J. Maas as an author enough. In fact, I'm currently listening to her audiobook, her very first adult book, known as Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood. It's fantastic. It's an urban fantasy for those who are interested in more modern day stories, and I'm loving it so far, so I'm excited to be discussing that with you at some point. Hopefully by next week, I'll actually be done with it. And I'm also currently physically reading From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout. I think that's how you say her name. It was recommended to me by fellow lovers of the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas. So if you have been listening in on my videos and know anything about A Court of Thorns and Roses and enjoyed it, then you might want to look at From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout as well. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I look forward to discussing more bookish content with you in the future. Until then, please subscribe, reach out to me if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'll see you the next time I review. Have a wonderful day.